Hi guys, welcome to Soundsphere Magazine. This is the Comic Sphere at Soundsphere Magazine. I'm joined by Ben. Would you like to introduce yourself, Ben?
Hi, otherwise known as Benksy.
Yeah, I'm Graham. I'm the comics editor, and we're going to be talking about the 77 and Blazer today and anything else that comes up. Right, so first question I'd like to ask you is, what does success mean to you?
Success means to me, Graham, that actually yesterday was the first day that I didn't go back to my old job after Christmas. That I'm doing a new job.
That is pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I'm earning the money I was before, but I'm filling my time doing those things. And I have an objective in mind, which is to get to a point maybe one day where it will actually pay me back. But I'm filling my time doing those things that I always wanted to be doing when I was, a kid. I don't mean a kid, I mean a young man. I've been in this game a long time, gone through different things, come through the other end, and here I am practically about 30 odd years later from when I started. And here we are. We've launched our own publishing company. We've got a few titles coming out. And 2 years on from when we all launched back in 2020, at the beginning of the COVID. It's been absolutely tremendous. So I would say that is doing what you want to be doing is successful. It's doing the next picture if you're an artist, writing the next page if you're a writer. It's not about the money. That's a nice little consequence if you get it. And ask anyone who's made quite a lot, they'll say, well, that's a good thing. But it's being able to determine what you want to be doing when you wake up in the morning and getting on and doing it. So very, very lucky. Today was the second day where I've woken up and gone, oh, I've got comics to do, like properly in the daytime. So it's amazing. Thank you for asking. That's a great question.
It's living the dream, isn't it? I mean, I think, I assume that you started off as a fan before you got into this sort of thing, obviously.
Well, you say that, mate. I've fallen in and out of love with comics and collecting and all sorts of things. What got me back into it, there was two things. In 2012, my stepson James bought me the Best of 2000 AD. It's on my shelf. It's something that I hadn't been reading 2000 for a long time, and he bought it for me because he just he always said, he said, Ben, you got, because he found my comic collection, and read it. My other boys were a little bit younger and weren't into comics at the time. And James being that bit older, so he was about 15, 16. He'd saved up and bought me this. You need to be getting back into this. And he really encouraged me. And then on from that, so 4 years later, we went to the 40th anniversary of the 2000 AD birthday celebration. And that was it. That was my first convention, like in 25 years I'd been to. And I was just back in it. I just met loads of people. I've been doing something on Facebook for a while, my group, the t-shirt here, the 1977 2000 AD group. But it'd all been low key. And I just kind of clicked and I went, you know what? I've fallen out of love with the job that's taken me a little while to get out of since. But I'd done that for a few years. And it was a really serious job. And I just kind of went, do you know what? I want to be a little bit more creative. And so I then fell back in love again, and that was about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I've just been working on it ever since. So back in love I am now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it always British comic books that you were interested in, or have you read American comics as well?
Mate, my generation. So my history, all the usual little ones like Beano, Monster Fun for the generation that I was in. Straight to Action when that first came out. So I was 8 years old when Action first came out. Great comic. And then 2000 came out when I was 9. And I know I followed those people through. So Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, all those guys, when they went over to America, I followed them. So I bought Swamp Thing. Yeah. Bought all the Watchmen and all that sort of stuff, when Alan Grant did Batman, I read those Batman. Yeah. I'm not someone who's been like totally into all of those superheroes, MCU and stuff. I'm sorry. Don't know too much about all that stuff. I've really, really, really always supported the British comic industry, and I've always been interested in it, from Harrier Comics with Glenn Dakin and Phil Elliott and all those guys way back when. And then sort of Speakeasy magazine, all those people. So I knew of Tripwire magazine that Joel Meadows has reissued. The Bristol Comic Convention was one I went to. I grew up in Bristol. We had a great comic shop, so I met loads of comic people when they used to do the rounds. And do you know the sort of comic lore? There's something where Karen Berger came over for the British artists in mid-80s,
Yes.
the early 80s. She came to this comic shop in Bristol, and I met her and chatted to her. And then a few years later, Archie Goodwin came over because he was looking for Vertigo titles for artists and stuff. And I was just a fan. And you could meet these people at comic shops, and they did a lot more of the rounds in those days because there weren't many comic conventions, UCAC. So I went to UCAC's 87 and 88, and I think it finished in 89. I'd have to ask Lou Stringer about that because him and John Freeman, they know all the dates and stuff. But they were all different things in those days. And yeah, I was a real collector of up till about 92, 93. So I bought all the Sandman stuff, Neil Gaiman, spin-offs from that. I loved Vertigo. I thought that was a really good series. Stray Toaster, Sienkiewicz, that was me. You know, I liked Sienkiewicz stuff because he was different, you know, so the Epic line, Marvel. So I was always kind of like a bit left field, and that's always been my interest, is the left field stuff, really. And I think, to be honest with you, I think the British creators were always seen by the Americans as a bit left field, you know, bit strange, because strange format size, black and white, anthology. Hey guys, what do you know, what's all that about? And I always liked that thing. I guess if I'd grown up as a kid in the cinema days, if you had in the 30s and 40s when you went to watch the cinema, they always left you hanging on a cliffhanger, you know? Yeah. If you watched a series, I don't know, Flash Gordon or goodness knows, I don't know what the series were, I can't remember now. But that's the point. I always loved about the anthology, 2000 AD and other comics, is that they had to keep you buying it next week. So you keep going back, and there was always that thing. And there was 5-6 stories in it. And I love the fact that you had to be condensed and write them and get that strip in. So I did all my own things as well. And I obviously tried drawing, and I ended up doing animation, Graham, for a few years, worked with some quite well-known companies, and then ended up teaching design and got into some other jobs as well along the way. But I guess in the background there, I was always kind of interested in what the folks were doing now, you know, always interested in what's happening. So when Neil Gaiman did a new project, I guess I heard about it. I wasn't necessarily reading it. And now I've come back full circle. There you go. You know, the same people are doing stuff. And it's so funny, mate. I think back and so I read 2000 AD on occasions, right? Someone like Henry Flynn, I met Henry a few occasions. I went and met, he lives actually where I grew up in, down in Devon as well. He's in Teignmouth. I lived across the water in a village called Shulton, and we got quite a lot to chat about, and we know each other. I think he's been doing it 30 years now. And for me, he seems like one of the new boys. So it's really strange how quickly things go. You know what I mean? It's got, you know, how quick someone becomes established, and then they become, you know, very respected, and the new lot come through. And I'm so stoked to be involved in something where potentially we're going to be helping the next lot up, you know? So, that's where we're at. So to be honest with you though, so I started this new job. I haven't really got money to buy comics. So if anybody wants to send me any comics, that's great. But the best thing is I make them now. So, you know, that keeps me in comics. So about yourself, you've got a nice collection behind you, mate. So those are graphic. You've got the Batman. What's the Batman book, mate?
Which one?
The big black and white titled one.
I'll get it down for you. Hang on.
That looks a hefty tome. Goodness me.
This is the first half of the Scott Snyder run. There's New 52 is massive. Yeah, like it is genuinely massive.
Well, you know, you're doing some weights there, mate. You exactly do a few of those reps. Yeah. Wow. You see, and that's where I'm at, mate. I generally buy now collected stuff. I'm not buying a lot of monthlies, the floppies as such. Yeah. So I love looking at other people's. I love zooms. I love looking at other people's collections. So I mean, if I just turn my camera, we got the same thing going on here, mate. You know,
Ah, it's beautiful, isn't it? I think, yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've always liked about British comics is how, you know, it's mostly either anthologies or it's, you know, what the Americans would call the collected editions, like, you know, the big, like, you know, we get annuals, they get, you know, like just, you know, trade paperbacks or whatever. And it was only recently, one of the comic book groups I'm in on Facebook, someone, an American one, someone said, oh, they're thinking about launching an anthology comic. Would there be interest for an anthology comic? And people are saying, oh, I don't know, I don't think that'd work. And I'm like, I piped in, I said, like, you know, being British, that's what we were brought up on. It's always been anthology comics, like everything, like, you know. And he goes, oh yeah, but, you know, Judge Dredd. And I said, yeah, but Judge Dredd was an anthology. It wasn't just, you didn't buy a Judge Dredd book with just Judge Dredd in it. You know, you had all sorts of stuff. I'm wearing a Zenith t-shirt, you know. You know, that's just what the industry is in Britain. It always has been, and I hope it always will be, you know. And the other part of it is, you know, your collected editions. We seem to publish a lot more books that way rather than single issues.
I think the market's going that way, don't you think? What I hear about from comic stores is, you know, the margins on shifting a few units of a higher priced collected or graphic novel mean that the shop owner or the manager's likely to order them rather than having to spend, I don't know, equivalent amounts of money, but on more floppies and having to sell all of them to make the same money as selling a few books. And the model's changed, isn't it? You know, we've gone through Newsstand, we've gone through Diamond. Diamond's having to reestablish itself at the moment. Our model, the Kickstarter, selling directly, but also going digital and having digital shops. I think that's that's kind of, I think people are doing pick and mix. So you get these big firms now, Boom and all that lot, doing Kickstarters to test the ground and to be probably in one market. Look at Berserker and all that sort of stuff. And then you get us and people who have been doing it for longer, who regularly, quarterly, whatever, will do a Kickstarter, produce a book, fund it, get it out, and then they can sell those comics later. And then when they've got enough, they can collect them. And I was speaking with on a show with Tom Ward, the Incredible Elephant Man. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry, mate. I've just got a head cold. I've just forgotten the title of your book. So Tom and I did a seminar on kickstarting for LICAF, the Lakes International, last summer, because it was a virtual show, virtual convention. We chatted about his model, which was really, really interesting, is that comic, trade, you know, and the money's in the trades. As soon as you can get to the trades, you're going to get a new audience because they haven't got number 1, 2, 3, 4, but they'll buy the collected. It offers value. It's easy to ship. Not an awful lot more to necessarily print and work with. So, you know, we're thinking along similar lines. So, you know, it's watch this space really with us at 77 Publications, because we're at that point now. So I think we've got 2 or 3 titles, which, well, 2 of them are behind us, and we've got a 3rd one launching this year. And eventually, hopefully we'll have floppies, trades, collected, annuals, you know, all that stuff happening. So that's why someone like me's got to be doing it, keeping an eye on the whole thing full time, really.
Yeah, I mean, from a fan perspective as well, I like having, you know, a bookcase, you know, where you can display. You can't do that with floppy disks.
You've got those as well? Wow, you collect those?
With the floppy issues and single issues, you know. So it's just, yeah.
I mean, those long boxes, exactly. Like you, I've probably got long, you know, you've got long boxes, what? In the loft, in the garage,
in the garage. Yeah.
They're not there on show, are they? And so many great comic covers, you know, I talk about Sienkiewicz. There's no one who does a better cover than him as far as I'm concerned. You know, his stuff for Dr. Zero, I didn't care for the strip, but boy, I loved his covers. Spider-Man, I only bought Spider-Man when he did it, you know. You know, those covers, it was the covers that attracted me straight in. And then you put them in these boxes and they're kind of lost a bit. And there's always been that sort of tension, hasn't there, between the collector, the archivist, and the exhibitionist, the person who wants to show what they've got. So, you know, as kids, we go, yo, look at this comic, look at this comic. You do that with your friends. But here we are now as a bit older. And as you say, it's like the books have got spines and they're on the wall and they're still a presence, whereas the comics are kind of, they're in the background, aren't they? They're in their long boxes, stuck away. And it's interesting how things move on. I mean, you know, I don't think comics will stop being sold, but it does show that a book with pages, so many different formats. I think there's room for so many different formats now in people's day-to-day sort of purchasing. They're buying monthlies or they get them annually, or my pull list when I was a kid, I was buying 25 35 titles a month, all across Fantagraphics. I bought Cerebus, I bought Fantagraphics was Peter Bag Hate, Reed Fleming, what was it, Reed Fleming's Milkman story, some weird strips, man. All this kind of indie stuff as well as some of the well-known, I say, Swamp Thing and Sandman and Hellblazer and Black Orchid, and they came out and this and that and the other. I had a pull list of 30 comics, but that was really short and really hot, and that was only for about 5 years. I was in that kind of fervor for only about 5 years. And then I went to college, and then I had no money, and then things change, and then you get married and you decide whether or not you're going to afford to do that or run a car or something.
Or your wife does.
Yeah, that's it. But my wife, Kirsty, she supports me doing this. And when we first met and started dating, I was buying her a graphic novel every month. That's how I used to, every month she'd get a graphic novel turn up in the post, because I was introducing her to the wonderful world of, So she's got Bunty, she's got Beano, she's got Asterix of Gaul, she's got all the collections. She had those things, but she didn't necessarily know about the wonderful world of other things. So she's into science and stuff. So we've got books on science, Dr. Richard Freeman, and things about astrophysics explained in graphic novels and all that. There's a different world to all of those things, aren't there? There's your serious sort of, there's your fiction, fan fiction, anthologies, and then you can get graphic novels of other things. So I've got stuff on ancient Roman whatever and Greek philosophy and et cetera, all in comic format, and it just appeals to me. So I stopped buying those monthlies and I started buying other things, but there's a great market out there, and you can get stuff really quite cheap, can't you? You can buy good stuff, which people sell for not a lot of money. And I don't think there's been a better time to be a comic fan really at the moment, because you can go retro, you can get digital, you can go online, you can use Comixology, Comic House, reading through. You don't have to buy all the stuff, do you? You can flick and pay and not a lot of money. Yeah. I'm signed up with Comic House because our comics are there, and the library's huge. So however you want to do it, you can pick and choose, can't you?
Yeah, there's one of the things that worried me with the pandemic was, for a moment I did think that the comic book industry might fold in on itself. Like when the big companies like Marvel and DC ordered pencils down, you think, what's going to happen?
Yeah, but like the dinosaurs dying out, the little mice started running about, and that's exactly when we picked up. And our philosophy was, Graham, we felt we got a louder voice in the quiet. We didn't have a big voice, but we could be heard a little bit more, because suddenly it was like deathly quiet. So all of the, not all, but the shops which were open, or the distributors who were available to us, they weren't receiving that many emails from people saying, here's this and here's that, and this is the next thing coming. It was us and some other, Sentinel and other strips which started in that time. So we'd planned to launch, our background here about 77 was we planned to launch a comic convention very close to our hearts, which is the Lawless Comic Convention in Bristol, run by Sue Hadrill and others. Centered on British comics, mostly 2000 AD, but it features all sorts of artists turn up. Beano artists turn up. Dave Lloyd turns up and supports it. You got the old stalwarts, Mick McMahon, Steve McManus. All these guys turn up, and they're very accessible. And we love that show so much, actually. So we're going to be sponsoring it this coming year. But we were going to be like selling a comic at that convention. That's what we produced with friends of ours online, and then of course that got pulled, and everything got pulled, and we still had a comic, and we were like, well, okay, we sell it, and it went down really well, and people were very kind. And then we went, well, I suppose we better go and do number 2 now. And it's been a continuing kind of process, really, from that. So timeline, we did our first Kickstarter exactly 2 years ago, January to February 2020. And the comic itself launched in May of 2020. That was during the first deep lockdown. And so the first year and a half of our existence was purely COVID experience. You know, we couldn't have got out and met anybody if we wanted to. So like you're doing here, Zooming, we all started doing it, didn't we? We all, you know, how many of these podcasts and vlogs and all these shows are there? It's brilliant. We're meeting people, you know, we're reaching out to people, we're getting submissions from a lot wider people now, simply because we've been stuck indoors and we have to use our tech, don't we, to get up and meet people.
Yeah, it's incredible what we've been able to do with technology as well. Which leads into another question I was going to ask. In terms of how you do sell your product,
yeah,
is there a leaning between digital and print? Because
fair enough,
digital is very new, isn't it?
Sure. In terms of our platforms, which are slightly different than necessarily the formats, we obviously don't have a physical shop. We have an online shop, and I'm just going to mention it now. Maybe we'll get this up on the screen as well. It's the 77comic.net, and that's a big cartel shop. Absolutely fabulous company that organise those shops. We haven't done Etsy. We're looking into Amazon again. We tried Amazon a couple of years back. I'm looking at doing some more on that. Now, obviously, with those stores, it is so simple just to literally copy and paste someone's email address and send them a file. Yeah, absolutely fine. You know, and we've got flick through files, or you've got dump down PDFs that people can download and they can do this. In terms of you wanted to know how popular they are, I would say in all of our sales, so with Kickstarters, we include those as well in terms of how we look at our customer base. We're usually around about 15% to 20% sales are digital. Obviously, the price is less, but there's no production cost apart from the payment for creators anyway, and the original production cost of producing a comic. And the print itself, I mean, we've sold out of number 1. We're having to go to a reprint on that, which we've just recently done. And of course, what we've got now is the distribution issues with regards to posting out stuff. So another question is, how do you get stuff out to people who aren't in your country? Now, obviously, digital is the easier answer for all of that because there are no borders, there are no tariffs, there are no costs on top. We are hearing stories now where people in the EU are receiving our comics and they're paying the same again on tariffs. I'm not getting political here, I'm just talking about what the situation is since we've pulled out of the EU. And that's making people think an awful lot about the format that they want to choose to use, to read, to buy, and also to produce. But I'll be honest with you, there ain't nothing quite like holding that comic in your hand as far as I'm concerned. And I think that reaches out and touches a lot of people, the collectors and the real enthusiasts who want to have something in their hands, and they'll pay what they need to pay for that, which is why we always wanted to have a comic that was a little bit getting a bit more. So it's big size, 64 pages plus, you know, and oh, you got one there, have you, mate?
Yeah, I've got quite a few.
Oh, he's got quite a few. Excellent.
I have all of them. Well, so far, there's your number 1.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. So, Graham, you're a collector, and I know I'm really, really stoked to see that you have the collection. Oh, you've got variants as well.
I do. Well, I have the 1 variant. It's a lovely variant.
The Fabry. Yeah, man. Can I tell you a little story about that? So Glenn was down for the variant cover of number 1, and then Glenn is so in demand. I mean, you know, when Bowie, what's his name? Come on, who's the guy who did Maddie? David Bowie's son. I've forgotten his name temporarily. This is head cold.
Yeah, I know you mean.
It's not Moon Unit 1, is it? I can't remember his name. Apologies, mate. I'm just saying. So basically, Glenn Fabry. I mean, you know, so in demand. His time is not really his own. He's got so much to do. He couldn't fulfill on number one, the cover, and we waited and we waited and we waited and we waited, and we eventually got our cover 2 years later. But we got it, and that came to me. That artwork came to me. You know, smelling it, looking at it. You know,
Duncan Jones.
Mate, Duncan Jones. Thanks, Duncan.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Duncan. And yeah, well, you know, I don't know how many pages they got in Maddie. In the annual, in issue 6, I think we've got 8 pages, 7 pages, 9 pages. I can't remember what we got. The Glenn Fabry story, and it's just like, wow, Glenn Fabry story. You know, I got the artwork. I had to scan it. I was doing that. So for me as a fan, actually to get hold of the artwork and actually look at it and not touch it too much, but you know, it's a real pleasure. So we got his cover. Who else we've had Nick Percival, we've had Paul Williams, Hal Laren has done some covers for us. Great. We're really lucky. You have a black shape behind you, and it's looking at your comics.
Come here, you. No, he's going. Come on.
That is a comic collecting cat. I love it. Calculus Cat by is a strip I can tell you about, which is a very good cat strip. So yeah, to get hold of this stuff and to actually get the variants and stuff. So yeah, wow, well done. You bought that one, so that's fantastic.
I'm very proud. It's a beautiful cover.
That's very kind of you to say.
This one yet, but it's just yeah. So anyway,
and on the back there, I think we've got new artists. So Ian Stopforth is doing Extinction 2040 with Paul Goodenough. So Paul is the force majeure behind rewriting Extinction, the most important comic book in the world, which has basically taken its #1 most places, the sales and Amazon, etc. of its genre. A very good book with, I think it's 300 different creators in, all focusing towards funds going to charities and organizations, NGOs, non-government organizations who are on the ground saving the planet. Yeah, I just want to put a plug in for that book. Go and buy it. Okay, it's the so Rewriting Extinction, the world's most important book. I think it's called The World's Most Important Book. And I got a copy of it somewhere. I read it. I paid for it. Paul has written a strip for us, which Ian Stopforth's doing. And Ian's going to be a breakout artist this year. Andrew Sawyers does The Cell with Bambos Giorgio, who's been working in British comics for 30 odd years, was a writer, artist. And The Cell was Andrew's first published strip. He's gone on and does another strip for us, but he's been in Shift. He's doing album covers for various metal bands at the moment, is really in demand. And he's a guy who's got a job, you know, been overlooked by other people, left it to one side for, like I did for a long time, come back into it. We got artists like Jeremy Dunn, who works for the RNLI on the side, does great artwork. He's done a strip for us called Undertow. He's been away for a long time. On the opposite of that, we got a guy called Drew Marr, who, when we first published him, was 10 years old. And he's in issue 1. And he does a collage effect, the rehabilitation of Dr. I. And he's got his own publishing company. And he's still published more comics than I have. And now he's 12 and a half or 13. And he's based in Dundee. And he knows everybody. He knows the editor of the Beano. He knows Ian Kennedy. Everybody wants to speak to him at Comic Cons, and we got him, and he's back in the annual, and that's the range that we have. So we have people who are sort of like Glenn Fabry, down to teenagers, and everything in between. And I think it's just it's a privilege of ours to be able to reach out, take submissions, promote people, and I hope that we'll talk about the anthology. You couldn't do that if you just had a series of one strip in a book, could you? You would have to have a whole series of books, whereas we've got an anthology and we can have 8, 10 stories in it. So, you know, now not every single one is everyone's favorite. You get that. I'm sure you might perhaps have your favorites and others you're not necessarily so keen on, but you know, that's the way that the anthology works. So
That's the beauty of it as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried. You can imagine this, right? So I'm the group editor. Steve Bull was the editor of the annual. Okay, works with us. He's a director of the firm. He put together the annual, and obviously, think about the amount of meetings we had, and this and that. But I tried not to read it as a book. I saved it till Christmas Day. So on my holiday, where I was on Christmas Day, opened up the annual and read the annual, and it took me an hour and 20 minutes, I think, to read it. And I just had a great time because we wanted. I don't know. Did you read yours at Christmas Day, or did you?
No, I've still not actually read it.
Wow, you must be busy. You must be really busy.
Oh, I'm far too busy. It's unbelievable how much work I've got to do.
Okay, well, you put it on your read list, and
it's on there. Yeah.
Oh man,
I was hoping to have read it before Christmas, but you know, I mean, I do this. I've got a full-time job. I'm an open university student. I work in a nightclub. I've got loads of things, and unfortunately, it just sucks up all my time. But it is firmly on my to-read list. While we're talking about breakout writers and artists, there's one artist that you've not mentioned, Dan
Cornwall.
Yeah.
He's not breakout. He's already broken out, mate. He's out there. He's out there.
Now, but like, you know, a couple of years ago, he was a bus driver. You know,
well,
and it's such a success story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're hoping that he can drive us to the next convention. We'll hire a bus and he can drive us. You know, we'll go out on a team outing. Yeah, I mean, Rock the God, and now Judge Dredd, and word is he's getting a Big Red saga.
Ooh.
And Dan's returned in Blazer #2, which we've just completed the proof file tonight. So I was just in a meeting before tonight with our editor, Andy Richmond, and Steve McManus, Tharg, aka, who wrote all of Blazer. #2 is out and kickstarted just before Christmas, and will be coming out during the spring. Yeah. Dan has returned with another episode of Steve's Godwin's Law, and mate, seriously good stuff, and full of pathos, and full of some. Oh, it's a really interesting. It's like Steve's compressed the history of a strip into 2 parts. So you've got the kind of the wild action of the first one, the carefree up, and then you've got the darker kind of demise of the character in part 2. Where he has some retrospective, introspective kind of, you know, thoughts and stuff. And it's brilliant. The way Steve's done this in just 2 parts, because obviously people may or may not know about Blazer. I'll explain. So it's the supposition is that we found a comic. And the comic was, in Steve's mind, it was what would have happened between battle action and 2000 AD. That's what he would have done. And it comes from a novel that he wrote 3 or 4 or 5 years ago called The Sheer Glam Conspiracy. And the novel is the story told fictionally, and I know Steve was on the show a couple of weeks ago, so I won't, people's watch this, I won't go into too much detail, but I read it, and there were some strips in the back, and I went, this is great. I've got to dare ask, because we were looking for material, and that's how it came about. Well, Steve hadn't written part 2, so he's got to go out and do all the part 2s, and yeah, so that's coming out, and Dan's work is just, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's like this is what the guy said. This is what all the other artists said. Dan's work is like you're at a party and you're going in the mirror, not bad. And then this handsome bloke turns up and you're like, oh, shizer, So Dan, everyone's like, oh, look at my art. And then Dan turns up and it's like, oh, better up my game. Yeah. He's getting there, honestly. And yeah, fantastic to have him on board. And he's a busy lad. So he's also moved, mate. He's moved. And as you say, he's given up the buses and working with John Wagner and obviously with Matt Smith at Rebellion in 2000 AD. And yeah, he's doing Judge Dredd and getting covers. And who knows what will happen next? It's not too many steps, is it, to someone else knocking on your door and asking for the work. So in the meanwhile, we nabbed him and got 10 pages of artwork off him. So absolutely thrilled to have it. And he's a nice chap. We've had some good meetings and stuff. And it's a pleasure to work with him. We've got Colin Maxwell, who's a lecturer in comic design up in Dundee, and he's a writer for Commando, and he's doing strip for us, doing artwork on that. We've got Filippo Ronconi, who's done lettering for Tsar Jazz and Sector 13 and all those other comics, and worked for us in the 77. Did some artwork for us previously. He's doing a strip. Brendan Wright, who's our art editor at the 77. He's doing a strip called The Tinkling Triangles, and that was in the book and came out as in number 1 of the 77, and he's returned in part 2 in Blazer number 2. And what we've done with that is we've got him center pages, color, and then you have to turn to the back page for the last color page. You see, that's what they used to do in comics, because the rest of it's in black and white. So we've tried to give it the old production feel. And that story was being, yeah, we discovered these comics. And obviously there are some people that kind of missed the memo and are like, what's all this about? And that's fine. And that's absolutely fine. But what the date on the comic, you got it there in front of you. What's the date on the comic, mate?
74, I think.
Yeah, April the 1st, I think you'll find, mate. Is it April the 1st?
April the 1st, 1974.
Yeah, the April the 1st thing is for there for people to, but the 74 is to give it its notional release date.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I've got something similar looking behind me. And yeah, so we've released number 2, and number 3 will either be an amalgamated amalgamated comic. That's what they used to do. Was it hatch, match, dispatch? So the notion is you launch a comic, you incorporate another one to it, and then you kill that one off, the other one. So Steve has worked on a comic strip or notions that he's got this other book called what's it called? Oh, he's going to kill me again. It's a horror. It's a horror comic.
Horror one.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. And if number 3 comes along, we'll introduce some of those strips in it. Or we'll give Steve the option to do a summer special, because we're a proper beach-based summer special where everyone's on the beach.
Nice. That'd be good. That tugs on the nostalgia strings a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, because what we decided to do is we wanted Blazer to be purely nostalgia, and we're moving the 77 away from being a nostalgia comic. That's how it first started, a bit retro. But as we've gone through and we're now 6 issues in and up to number 7 coming out in a few weeks, we've realised that we want to be doing a lot more contemporary stuff. And we're changing and developing how the comic looks, and some of the stuff in the annual and the logo and how the front cover is going to look will change. So a bit like other comics will have done, they develop, and they evolve, and that's what we wanted to do. We just weren't sure at what point. So it was our 2nd anniversary issue 7. You're going to see some changes. For example, we won't be doing black and white strips anymore. The paper will be the shiny paper again. We're coming back more into sort of like where people want their comics to be now. It's not because we felt that it wasn't working the other way around, but it was sort of a plan that we would kind of gradually evolve the comic. And once we'd done 2 and 3 and 4, and we realized that we were going to be around and working it, people ask us as well about the Kickstarters. Oh, is that model sustainable? Why do you do it? Couldn't you do something else? I think the 77 will remain Kickstarter because it's a way that we can take a punt on new talent, and they will be paid. Yeah. When we come to reprinting, we're not going to be kickstarting reprints. We're talking about the collections and stuff. No. We've got one coming up very, very soon. Can't mention too much about it right now, but in March there will be a comic which will be sold in WH Smith's and comic shops. It's our first real venture into that sort of line of distribution, and there won't be a Kickstarter for that. That will be funded from receipts from sales that we've made over the last year and a half, because our working kind of operation involves us. Everyone gets a page rate. And then if the Kickstarter goes above that, they get an additional rate, and they all receive information about, all the creators receive information about that at the beginning of the Kickstarter to say, look, we're all in this together. Myself and the other guys, the directors, call ourselves, because we are a company, we don't take anything from the Kickstarter. What we do is we overprint and then print copies. You get a healthy batch sent to the creators, and they're welcome to sell them on. And we have a shop, and all proceeds from that go into our company, and then we will be spinning off new titles. So that is in effect what we're doing. So we've got that title coming up in March. We've got a new title, Pandora, should be out sometime late spring, early summer. So Jo Healy, she's in charge of that, and that's going to be quite a different format, very different looking book. And then we've got another title coming out in autumn, October, and we'll be back to the W.H. Smith strip or format again at the end of the year as well. So we're hopefully going to get 2 of those going a year, 4 77s a year, 1 annual, a blazer, 2 new titles. So suddenly, mate, we're almost at a publication a month.
Wow. That's impressive stuff. Like you came from doing 1 issue, as a Kickstarter, and suddenly you've got this, that's quite a portfolio of material you're putting out.
Well, when you receive invitations and when people submit, and anyone wants to submit for submissions, the address, it will be on this as well, but it's the 77submissions@gmail.com. I've got to be honest, we're mostly looking for artists, all right, because we're writers ourselves, and we're doing all right for strips, and we get submitted some pretty awesome strips from some pretty well-known people. So we might just keep that model. But artists, so we got this new guy, oh my days. It took us 2 years to get him. No one would have heard of him, no one. And he appeared in the annual. The writer's name is Mahmoud Obeguele, and his pal is an artist, really well known in Africa. His name is Morby, that's what his pen name is, but his name is Toyin. Toyin Achenmule, I think is his name is. And Toyin, if I've said your name wrong, I do apologize, mate. I'll call him Toyin. It's his first name, I call me Ben. Mate, these guys, fully formed, fully rounded, brilliant. And we've just struck this seam of creatives out of Nigeria, and they are just awesome. And they got mates, and we're like, oh my days, this stuff is unbelievably good. We got some of this coming. We get, I don't know, submission every month on average of someone who you go, we want them. We might get 2 or 3 other people who you go, we'll appraise your work, we'll review it, here are some suggestions, come back to us, or we can recommend other people who would be interested in your work potentially. And there's obviously now people know about us and think, well, that person got printed and maybe I can get published, and we're never going to stop looking out for new talent. So naturally, we can't have 1 comic containing all this stuff. And the 77 needs to have a theme. It needs to, even if it's an anthology, it needs to have a direction and a feel. So that's why we're spinning out with other comics, and other sort of opportunities exist for people. So I wouldn't say to anybody, oh, you've got to do a space story or a space opera or a sports story, old-fashioned British sports story, or a fantasy story. You do what you do, do what you do and be yourself, and send us what you're really keen on and love. And we treat everybody like adults, I mean, I'm not a hard editor who goes, oh, you've got to have this way of doing it, and the pages have to look like this. If you've got your own way of doing things and it kind of works, who am I to say? I'm not a professional, not been in the game for that long, just happen to be a publisher who's commissioning and what have you. But we got 3 other editors now. So Steve Ball did the annual, Jo Healy is doing Pandora. We've got Dave Healy's going to be doing our new title in the autumn. Myself, got Andy Richmond who's done Blazer. So, we've got a lot of people involved, and it's I suppose what you get is when you build a team, you get, everyone's strengths come in, and we sure have a few chats. You know what I mean? It's we have a chat about stuff if we want to put our point across. But I couldn't do this on my own, mate. Imagine it, kickstarting, social media. We've got Anna Everts. Hi, Anna. They do our Twitter. Dave Bedford does that as well. I do the Facebook, but we got 3 groups. So we got other people doing the group stuff. Morgan Spiceman, how do you do, pal? He does our original 1977 to 2000. It's like one big kind of conglomerate. So if you chat to people who are doing it all themselves, no wonder they look a bit frayed, because I couldn't imagine doing it all myself. It's a massive, massive undertaking, you know, going through all the proofing. And then imagine you've got to try and do the write it and draw it and get it printed and distribute it. I couldn't imagine doing that. So I feel very, very fortunate to be working with such a bunch of lovely guys.
Yeah, you've done very well for you, all of you. It's not just you, all
yeah, exactly. I'm just
yourself,
the voice tonight, you know. Everyone's sort of like, oh, Ben, you know, you're the face of this and face that. Yeah, but you know, it's not me doing the work. In fact, actually, I'll be honest with you, issue 6, I didn't have a strip in the comic. You know, I had one small strip in the annual, but now obviously I'm sort of looking to have the role now of being the publisher. It's slightly different, and everyone's finding their own little niche. And we got people who want to control their stories and keep them going. So Steve Bull does V, Dave Healy does Silver Jubilee and Division 77. You know, we got Dave Bedford is doing with Bruno Stahl. So Bruno Stahl did some work with Pat Mills in Space War. He's got this new Viking fantasy series called Jorman, and that's going to be absolutely awesome. So that's in number 6. You're saying you haven't read it, right? You haven't read number 6?
I haven't read it yet, no.
Oh, mate, you see, I can. Yeah, that's a brilliant painted piece of work there. Bruno's just like amazing. We got other people who are just like, I can't really say yet, but there's some people who are coming along, and you're just like, oh my days, you know. And they approach us and say, would you be interested? And we're like, yeah, definitely. So my advice is to anyone who wants to get into comics, I'd say get a team, build a team. That's probably the best thing. Doing it on your own is a little bit of a, you know, difficult trick, really. But or just approach us and we'll help you out. You know, we are a publishing house, so maybe one day, who knows, Graham, maybe we'll be looking to publish other people's work, actually titles and stuff. Bit early days yet to be talking about that, because we need to focus on what we do.
But the future's bright.
The future's bright. But you know, who knows? Maybe there is always that thing. And I said to the guys, I'm starting to get the nerves now, because the next Kickstarter is just around the corner, and because I build them and design them, I always get those, you know, the little niggles, the little, is it going to work? You know, you've got to put a realistic total on that actually means that we're going to pay the production costs. You know, it's too easy to say, oh yeah, here's a really little total and we'll smash it in a couple of hours. Yeah, that's all good. But if it still don't meet all your costs, then there's not much point in doing that. So what we found is we now go into the end of the first week, and we still probably necessarily haven't always hit our target. Whereas when we were new and green and a bit naive, we used to go, oh yeah, we're going to set this target, and I smashed it in 4 hours. And then we had to kind of like keep working at it to actually understand that that wasn't realistic. So the Kickstarter will continue for the 77. As for the other titles, don't really know. If sales continue well, then we'll have funds and we can release other titles, which I've said. We will be doing a couple of them, testing the water this year. It suddenly makes, I've got to be honest with you, Brent, it suddenly makes a year seem really short when you've got a printing schedule. And what I said to Stephen Manus, I just got no idea. Can you imagine this? Producing a comic every week.
It'd be crazy. I mean, like,
can you imagine that? Go to work on a Monday, and by Friday you have to have a new comic. Now I know there's people working back, and then you know the commissions were 3 months before, and all. I know that. But just the notion of producing a comic every week, and you know, there's loads of people. Dave Hunt, who's a member of our group, he was the editor of various other titles, and I'm going to probably get them all wrong now, but I think it was, oh gosh, was it Valiant, or was it, I don't know, the titles from the 70s, you know, and other people, Barry Tomlinson, who worked with these guys. These were people who were producing comics that we knew, or my generation knew and loved, and they were doing it on a weekly basis. And it's just, I still can't get my head around that. And I work on like a monthly basis now. So, and that's still a bit of a hard one.
But that might be why British comics have always flourished with anthology stories because you've got so many people working on the one issue. Whereas when the Americans have tried to do a weekly comic, for the most part, they've never really worked. I mean, like 52 was a masterpiece, in my opinion.
All right.
Like when even like Scott Snyder, when he did he sort of figureheaded a Batman Weekly story that lasted for a full year. And, you know, it started great and it fell flat. You know, they don't do it the same as the British.
Right.
And I don't want to sound, you know, xenophobic or anything, but it's just true, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. But we're really looking forward to when we can collect a strip. So, for example, V at the moment, if it get, you know, we're at issue 7, it's had 5 or 6 pages. It's already now, you collected it up to 30 pages. Steve and Aid Hughes, the artist, they've got an idea of what they want to do. They would love us to produce a hardback for them, not just a collector. They want to have a hardback. And the first 3 strips weren't in color. So we're going to recolor those, get those done. And what we might do is we're thinking of this notion of one of those books that you turn around. So on one half, you read the original strips in black and white, and then the other half, you read the colored ones. Now, for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, twice as many pages, But they're sort of like, oh, well, we think people are interested in that. That might be interesting. Not sure. They'd have to sell that total notion to me. But definitely that's going to be collected. And Division 77 will be collected. And, you know, the Cell will hopefully be collected. And other strips are going to come along and they're going to be hopefully collected at some point. So people can buy them. And it wouldn't hopefully be something where, sorry, what you'd get is you would definitely get new material with it. So you'd get, you know, like a prologue, and you get posters, and you get a feature article on the sort of embryonics of it, how it came about, and all that stuff. So we always want to kind of give people what they want, which is new stuff. And hopefully the collectors will go, yeah, you know, it's reasonably priced, and we'll buy into it as well. So for those people who weren't with us at the beginning, who knows, you know, maybe one of these titles will be picked, selected for, you might say, bigger and better things. I don't mean that in any other way, apart from the fact is you never know, someone could come for them and we'll go, well, actually, we've still got the originals, you know, we got the stuff, and we will hang on to their coattails, you know. And we're very much of the notion that we feel that we won't all make it, but we think one of us is potentially going to do that. And on the basis of that, we'll all work together to get someone up there. And who knows, you know, who knows what it means for the publishing company. But we keep looking for opportunities elsewhere. And to be honest with you, it's really funny that it almost seems like you have to create your opportunities in terms of distribution and outlets and titles. No one sort of like gives you anything. So we're just thinking, oh, we'll keep going. I mean, I don't know, for example, do you know the history of Image? I ain't got a clue. But I know Image is a really huge studio and a really huge publishing house. But I guess it started with, was it McFarlane? Yeah, and that lot
McFarlane.
But they were in Marvel, yeah, and then they went and did their own thing.
What's his name? Oh God, Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, and these guys were extremely well known. But what they wanted to do was they wanted to do their own thing, and for them doing their own thing was more important than receiving the monthly paycheck. Yeah, I'm sure they've all done very, very well out of it, but they worked together. That was the point. They were supporting each other in the whole thing, and that's what we're trying to do with the 77. So behind the scenes, the creators and stuff, we support each other, we promote each other, you know, work with each other. So that's a real privilege, and that's where I feel, you know, I feel that is the dream. You know, it's working with some incredibly talented people, and if I can just be any part of that, smallest part of it, then I'm totally thrilled. So yeah.
I mean, I must say, as a consumer, you know, your product is beautiful, and I'm not alone in saying that. You know, you've done a really good job. It's very popular. It's, you know, I mean, knowing now that you've got more stuff in the pipeline, you know, it's heartwarming to know that you're doing so well, you know. And
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like when I first saw that you were doing Blazer, I thought, oh, this, you know, this is really good, this. But, you know, like with them, you know, I mean, you've only said the name Pandora and already I'm interested, you know.
Absolutely. And Pandora is going to be so totally different than anything we've done before. And we'll talk about it right now. So Ben McLeod is the cover artist for our newsstand edition of number 7. I'd like to include as a preview for this show. We'll have a you're going to see the cover of Blazer number 2. We'll give the details again. We can get it, but we'd like to give you the heads up on the exclusive on the cover, the new cover for number 7. And I would like someone to contact me about where the inspiration comes from the cover. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about it at all. So it's Ben McLeod, his cover, okay, for number 7. And if you contact us, email us at the77@gmail, or just go on the Facebook group, the 77 Comic. There will be prizes for people who get the link. Okay, we're going to show it at the end of the show, so it'll be edited onto this. I'm afraid I haven't got it with me now because it's all digital. So Graham, you've got an exclusive there, mate. You're going to be showing the cover to number 7, and our Kickstarter won't be going on till, gosh, I don't know when we start. I think it's about the end of January, so we still got like 3 or 4 weeks yet. The cycle's quite tight because you've got to produce a comic, or the product with a Kickstarter has to be fulfilled before Kickstarter will allow you to do another one. So we just can't go bang, 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 bang. We have to fulfill Blazer. So that's why at the moment the print starts up tomorrow. It'll be distributed in a week or so. Then we can go to Kickstarter and say, yep, we fulfilled it. You know, everyone's received their comics, T-shirts are being produced. There's a couple of other items that have got to be done, like the scripts and the signed bits of work and the commissions. But if you can get up to about 90% of the distribution, then Kickstarter will allow you to do the next one. And this is stuff that I've learned as I've gone through. So yeah, 77 kicks off soon, number 7, and there will be prizes, definitely. So get in touch with us about where the inspiration for the cover comes from, and it will be fantastic. So I look very much forward to hearing some people either on Facebook or on our Gmail account. So the 77comic@gmail.com. Email us or go on the Facebook group. And Graham, you are allowed to enter. So there you go.
I wasn't going to ask that.
Yeah, but not Dom. Dom's not allowed, but Graham is, yeah.
Right, we're going to have to wrap up now. Have you got anything else you want to say?
I just want to wish everybody, first of all, a happy, peaceful new year. Okay. Hopefully, we're going to catch people at Lawless. So we're sponsoring it down in Bristol. Thanks to Sue for offering the opportunity to be doing that. I want to say hello to all the guys at the 77. Good luck with Blazer, Steve McManus. I think you've done a great job there, mate. And yeah, I just want to say it's what Steve says as well. Just go and buy comics. Just go and buy some comics. Support local and indie comics, or any comics. Just go and buy them and enjoy them. And you know, I want to say also, this one's to my stepson James. Never stop thinking about you, mate. And he's the inspiration for me doing all of this. So you know, you need inspiration from different places, and never stop listening and looking at the young people around you. All right, it's not us old fogies who are going to be in charge of stuff. It's everybody coming up and pushing us up, you know, and making us better. So I just wanted to say, you know, comics may not be everybody's thing, but if you're into them, go and spend your money, and just yeah, spread the word, guys. Comics are good, and yeah, peace out, as they say. So thanks very much for having me on, Graham. It's been absolutely brilliant.
No, thank you. It's been wonderful to talk to you.